A couple of months ago, I made a video called Defending the Worst Theme Park Chain, where I talked about how Six Flags isn't nearly as bad as people say. I say a couple months ago like it wasn't like 2 years ago. I've been doing this bullshit for literally 2 years. In that video, I basically said why people's complaints about Six Flags are mostly invalid, and I just want to say that that video has aged like fine wine. Let me just take this moment to pat myself on the back, because holy shit, I was literally spitting facts, and you bozers who said I was wrong then turned around and proved me right. Like literally, I was saying how people would complain if Six Flags prices went up to make way for bigger editions, and oh, what do we have here? People crying when Six Flags increases their prices to build a B&M dive coaster. Like, what are you complaining about? It's a B&M. Bro, I just got an eye for this shit. I can just sniff out some complainers from miles away. Anyways, now that I'm done with my ego trip, let's talk about the so-called Six Flags resurgence. Recently, the company has made some changes to mixed reception, and in this video, I want to talk about why they're making said changes and what those changes are and what they'll do in the future. And to gloat about how I was right in the other video. That too. Now, we can't really have a resurgence without having something to fix, you know, to research. For around when Six Flags emerged from bankruptcy in 2010 to the pandemic, Six Flags was a hot mess. The company was constantly losing money, and they just weren't building the quality, crowd-bringing attractions like their competitors were. Like at Cedar Fair, you would get Fury 325, the world's tallest Giga, or Copperhead Strike, the highly themed multi-launch, or Banshee, the world's biggest and baddest B&M invert. And then at Six Flags, you get Harley Quinn Crazy Coaster. Six Flags kind of just accepted their brand as the discount chain. They lived in the shadow of Cedar Fair, and they seemed pretty content with that. Their business model specifically, when it gets all logic and reason, choosing quantity over quality and making everything as cheap both by price and experience as possible. This left a lot of guests with a negative view on the parks. They weren't the discount chain, they were just the shittier chain. Like really, there was basically nothing that Six Flags did better than Cedar Fair that didn't have to do with price. And of course, to tie this all together in a nice bow, there were these annual tragically corny Jim Reed Anderson coaster announcement videos. Like, dude, it's just like, why? Like, why am I looking at this grown man cosplaying for roller coasters? This is disgusting. The approach, however, came crumbling down in the pandemic when all the parks had to shut down. This put everyone in even more debt than they were in before, to unmanageable levels if their debt was already bad, which for Six Flags' case, it was pretty bad. Their debt before pandemic was nearing the levels of bankruptcy debt. And to be clear, when they went bankrupt, it was off of the heels of adding over 20 coasters for 3 years straight. They somehow managed to get in the same amount of debt as when they added 60 coasters in a row. Before I talk about the switch, I do want to highlight some good things about Six Flags. First, I'd like to say I really like how experimental they are. Through their entire 2010 run of economic tragedy, they still remained ambitious, taking new ideas like the RMC iBox, the SNS Free Spin, and the RMC Raptor, all of which were massively successful. Cedar Fair would have never taken a chance on RMC like Six Flags did. Like, they still kind of don't do that today. So yes, we can thank Six Flags' terrible financial skills for the rise of RMC. Thanks, Jim. I also liked their prices. I know that's the thing that was screwing them, but like, I liked that. It was unbelievably cheap to get a friend in while I used my season pass that they kept extending because of COVID. That's really it. Everything else was fine to me. Like, I didn't have a problem with the rides being the same name or clones, because like, I'm not going to like literally every single Six Flags park like other coaster YouTubers, so like, I simply do not care. Plus, most people don't do that, so that's kind of a stupid argument. Like, yeah, Six Flags has the rights to DC characters. They're gonna use them. I will not, however, commend them on their financial strategy, which, like I mentioned before, was dog water. Adding a small addition to every park is possibly one of the stupidest ideas ever. Oh my god, we got Superman Girl Flyer. I'm bored. One or two quality additions every year trumps 5 crappy additions around the parks. And that's exactly what they're doing now. We've arrived at the resurgence, where the management of Six Flags has changed hands. So bye, Jimmy. This dude is my boy now. But with new leadership comes changes. Under new management, we got the announcement of Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger, the B&M Dive Coaster. This is the first time Six Flags has worked with B&M in years, so I think it's safe to say that this was because of the change in leadership. I really doubt it just happened to line up with a new economic model. And I say new economic model because there's a new economic model, or at least pricing. Wow, that was a pretty stupid sentence. I'm just reading that now. The season and dining pass structure has been updated and revamped to make it pretty much worse all around for us for a higher price. And I know you're gonna be confused about that statement, but I never said it was a bad deal. I just said it wasn't as good as what it used to be. They removed some of the perks that made it so that people would literally go to the park just to use their dining pass and then leave. Is it better for us? Well, In the short term, no. In the short term, it actually kind of sucks, but you gotta think about the bigger picture. If Six Flags is making more money with a stable business model, then they'll be able to add these large additions that they previously couldn't on a more consistent base. It's just simple economics. They may start to add 2 or 3 large-scale coasters like this dive coaster every year. And you know how I know that this would work? Because that's basically just Cedar Fair's model. And I think basically is a loose term here because it really is just an exact copy. Cedar Fair has always chosen a few big additions over an onslaught of smaller ones. They'll add 2 massive B&Ms to their parks over an RMC conversion, 3 SNS free spins, and 12 random flat rides. And it's worked well. It gives people an actual incentive to come back when a ride opens. And yeah, some people may argue that a new ride every year will make people come back every year, but it's usually just like a low budget flat ride. So for most parks, is it really drawing the people back that much? Wouldn't a collection of solid large scale investments over a long period of time pay off in the long run and drawing people back every year naturally? That was one of the most English classy sentences I've ever written into one of these videos. The drawback of this is your smaller parks are going to be mostly neglected, like Cedar Fair is done with Valley Fair, Dorney, Michigan's Adventure, and a couple more. Like I said, how much good are these flat rides really doing these small parks for Six Flags right now? This model does, however, allow for the buildup of smaller parks with a solid foundation. It actually suits that really well. We saw this with Cedar Fair and Carowinds, taking a borderline average park and making it one of their best. There are a ton of parks I could see Six Flags doing with it. They already sort of do this with Fiesta Texas, except they're repeatedly doing cheap, high-quality coasters, not large-scale ones. This seems to be taking a turn, though, with a dive coaster, which being B&M will be at least relatively expensive. I could also see them taking this Carowinds approach with a park like Six Flags America, or Six Flags Over Georgia. Over Georgia already has a really strong foundation with an RMC and a B&M Hyper, so the proper steady stream of large investments every 2 to 3 years, give or take, I could see this park becoming one of, if not the best Six Flags parks. As for America, they don't have the strongest foundation, but they do have a lot of land and potential to expand. The populations that they're drawing from too is very promising. The future for Six Flags is definitely looking bright with this plan, and yeah, while it sucks for us now to have to pay more without results, it'll definitely be worth it in 5 years or so when their parks skyrocket in quality. If you made it this far, then thank you so much for watching all the way through, and I will see you in the next one.